What's happening YouTube? It's Andrew here with Table Talk, and today I am ranking every single racing board game ever invented, or at least all the ones that I've played, or at least my top 15. Let's get into the list. Before I rank my list, I just want to say, for me, I like simpler to learn and understand games. That doesn't mean they're the least complex games in the world, but I just like games that are easy to pick up. I like interactive games and thematic games. So that's why you might not see some more complex or less thematic racing games to me, like Thunder Alley or other games. Let's get into the list. My number 15 racing game is actually more like a programming game and is also a stone cold classic. And this is Robo Rally. In this game, you are playing as these crazy, evil, murderous robots running around facilities trying to accomplish objectives. The problem is, you're programming these robots and everyone else is programming their robots, and their robots can run into you, turn you around, throw you onto conveyor belts, shoot you as you're gonna pick up weapons and upgrades in a very chaotic but fun and unique game. So it was actually invented by the creator of Magic the Gathering. And in order to get someone to make this crazy robot game, he had to in turn create the most successful card game of all time, Magic. But in this game, you are probably not going to be as successful, as chaos is going to ensue. So if you like micromanaging and playing out every single decision, this might not be the game for you. But if you do like chaos, try to pick this game up from Renegade, the newer edition, and play a shorter map, a simpler scenario, and just let chaos ensue in Robo Rally from Renegade. My number 14 is Monza by Haba. Haba is the GOAT of kids board games. I'm talking like really simple kids board games like Hi-Ho, Cherry-O, or Candyland level, but way, way better. Because unlike racing in Candyland, where you're literally just flipping a deck to see what happens, you don't actually make a single decision in your life. Monza, you teach kids a little bit of strategy as they move around the board with different colors, these big chunky cars, and it's just a lot of fun. My number 13 is Unicorn Fever. Now this comes from Horrible Guild, and it's a little more complex than some other racing games, but that is because it has both a racing element with said unicorns and a gambling element, which I guess is the fever element. And this game kind of is a fever dream, and how it plays out is you see these unicorns racing down and you have stock invested in these unicorns and how they do. But I think there are other racing board games that do the gambling aspect a bit better. So that's what makes Unicorn Fever a slightly not as good alternative, and number 13 on my racing board game list. My number 12 racing board game is a play on deck building, but this time you, instead of building up a deck throughout a game, you're actually building up a pool of dice, and this is Cubitos. Where in Cubitos, you are gonna be playing as the name would say, a cube, and you're gonna get a bunch of cubes, aka dice, and roll them from these cube-shaped containers, and each one's gonna represent a fantasy cube. The one on the cover looks like SpongeBob, but it's a giant German cheese. And so you might play a giant German cheese cube or a dinosaur cube, but each of them is gonna have different powers and abilities depending on what set of powers and abilities you use in that game. And all those powers and abilities are gonna help you move your cube throughout this obstacle course, gaining fans and power-ups and being able to buy better cubes. You're gonna be able to push your luck a bit, seeing how many you wanna roll without trying to bust. So it can kind of be a lot. And it is a simpler game, but because of everything going on, I've always had a hard time picking this up, and the people I've played with have, so that's what makes it a little lower on this list. But if you like the idea of building up a pool of cubes, or in this case, dice, then check out Cubitos from AG, my number 12 racing game. My number 11 racing game is Tales and Games, The Tortoise and the Hare. This is another great kids game where it kind of brings that story tale to life, where you're gonna be playing as a tortoise and the hare, and I think like a wolf and a sheep, and each of them kind of runs a little bit differently. Obviously we know the tortoise, slow and steady, the hare, super, super fast. And it's really, really cool production. It's actually in a storybook, and so it brings those tales we grew up with to life. And it's a very, very fun, simple racing game, but still has some elements of strategy. Check out Tales and Games, The Tortoise and the Hare, my number 11 racing game. My number 10 racing game is for those of y'all that like roll and rides. I particularly don't, but in this case, it had a racing element, so it made me like it, because there is some bit of interaction as you're all doing roll and rides based on the horses racing around the track. in Long Shot, the dice game. I really love the production of this from Perplex. It has these cool cartoony horses, and you're going to be on your own dry erase sheet marking off different things like buying helmets or horses or betting on certain things or unlocking certain things. And it's ultimately going to be whoever does the best on their own right is going to win based on what's happening in the race. And so this is a very fun, very unique, quick playing, but a little more in-depth racing game, Long Shot, the dice game from Perplex. My number 9 racing game is actually the heaviest game on this list in terms of literal weight, not weight of complexity, and this is Pitch Car. Now, it's a bit expensive and hard to find, but if you can, you are gonna get these giant wooden tracks with these discs that represent cars, and you're actually gonna race the discs by flicking them around these wooden tracks all throughout a course with maybe loops, jumps, or ramps. And it is a lot of fun as it gives you that dexterity feel of maybe like an air hockey, a foos table, a billiards table, but in a racing game where you can literally run a course all around a table or a room. And it is a lot of fun to play with groups of people. You're taking turns, so it has a little more of a board game feel, but it is an experience unlike any other. Check out my number 9 racing game, Pitch Car. My number 8 racing board game is from the good doctor himself, the GOAT of board game design, Dr. Reiner Knizia, and he developed a deck building racing game where, like in a deck building game, you're gonna build up a deck, and that deck in turn is gonna help you race throughout the jungle to find the lost city of El Dorado. Shout out to an underrated DreamWorks movie. But in this game, you're gonna have to venture through jungles and rivers and around mountains, picking up things in villages and getting new cards using machetes and oars and different crew to be able to navigate through the jungle in the path the best, racing against the other explorers. So there are alternative routes you can take and different cards you can buy, bringing flavor to different courses you can play every time. So a little more complexity, but I think it makes a great deck building racing game. The Quest for El Dorado is a great new addition with great new artwork from Vincent Dutrait from Ravensburger. Check it out. My number 7 is another fantastic 30 to 60 minute racing game, but this adds a little more combat elements instead of deck building, and that is Jamaica from Space Cowboys, the new edition. Check it out. In Jamaica, you are going to be racing as pirate crews around an island, but just as pirate crews, you're going to be trying to take the other ships out in combat, stocking up cannons, but you got to get crew and you got to get supplies for your crew. You're also, of course, as pirates, going to be trying to pick up treasure and dump off cursed treasure, a la Davy Jones and Curse of Black Pearl, on your competitors. And this is just a really fun game with some dice. You also get some card play with this cool day and night system influencing how cards work and what things they give you and what they accomplish. And so it is a lot of fun as you get some combat, you get some piracy, you get some racing in a great pirate racing combat game. Jamaica from Space Cowboys, my number 7. My number 6 racing game brings that Mario Kart feel to life in just about 20 minutes, and this is Dodo Riding Dinos from Detestable Games and Draco Studios. In this game, you're going to be playing as literal Dodos riding dinos, running around these different island maps, trying to take the other Dino Dodo racers out. And you do this through actual dexterity elements of these different projectiles, throwing meteors and bananas and feathers, trying to actually hit each other over, and using this very unique card system where you can react to other people's cards. You can play normal cards, or you can play these special cards, but if someone else plays special cards or too many people play special cards, no one gets the special ability. So it's a lot of fun, very competitive, very quick playing, very simple and fun. That Mario Kart feel in a box. Dodos Riding Dinos, my number 6 racing game. Into the top 5 with my number 5 racing game, and this is the best gambling racing game because it is literally all about the gambling. We're not even trying to pretend to race anything, as we're just watching a horse race and throwing down poker chips, betting down on different odds, and this is Ready, Set, Bet. You got a friend out there who's a fan of FanDuel, maybe a little too much, just show them this game where you don't actually have to bet your real money. Instead, you're going to be laying down these chips on different odds, trying to get winnings as these horses race in real time. You're actually going to do a couple different races, unlocking power-ups around the way, and it just synthesizes that gambling feel, the best part of games like Unicorn Fever, and that's the whole game, just the gambling, laying down, placing your bets, seeing what happens as these horses race in Ready, Set, Bet from AEG, my number 5 racing game. Number 4 racing game is a seemingly classic, but it just came out and it's taking the board game world by storm, and this is Heat Pedal to the Metal from Days of Wonder. Now, this has a very unique system with that heat as you're laying out cards, and you're not trying to get too much heat on your engine or it'll mess it up. But it takes this seemingly more strategic or more complex card system than it actually is, because it streamlines it to make it so simple to understand. But you can actually add more depth by doing a tournament mode, using different maps, using AI racers, which work really well, adding different modules like weather or upgrades, and it's just such a fun, versatile, more complex yet simple strategic racing game that is Heat Pedal to the Metal from Days of Wonder. Number 3 racing game comes from Restoration Studios, and this is Downforce. It is a restored classic where you are going to be laying down bets and auctioning off different cars and different power-ups in a very simple, streamlined racing feel where you get to race around these different maps and these Formula One cars, and you actually place bets. So maybe if your car is not doing the best, you can still win by placing your bets the best, laying out these different colored cards where you get to move the different cars in a very simple yet strategic game, a little lighter than Heat, which makes it easier for me to play with my friends. Number 3 racing game, Downforce. My number 2 racing game comes from Eggert Spiel, and this is my favorite synthesis of that gambling aspect and that racing aspect. And this is Camel Up 2nd Edition. We're gonna be racing camels around a map. There's crazy camels, making them go the opposite way. There's a 3D pyramid with dice, a pop-up palm tree, and you're gonna be picking up different bets, laying down bets long term, booster pads, slowdowns, in a crazy, chaotic gambling experience over racing camels that has never fallen flat for me. And this is Camel Up 2nd Edition, my number 2 racing game. Thank you guys for so much for watching. I never expect anyone to watch. I always love when you guys do. Let's get to number 1. My number 1 is Thunder Road Vendetta by Restoration Games. This adds a combat element unlike any other. You have 3 different cars racing down this track. You're going to be shooting at each other, firing missiles. There's going to be mines exploding. You're going to be going off ramps, running into hazards, toxic goo, mines off of the side of the map, into canyon walls, crashing, slamming into each other in a chaotic, so fun racing game with a bit more complexity, bit more of a cost, but incredible production and a feel unlike any other. A lot of fun. Thunder Road Vendetta, my number 1 racing game. With all that being said, I'm going to catch you guys on the flip side.